began to be interested in the idea of postmodernism, I suppose, in the late 70s and early 80s. But I came to it really through architecture. And through the sense, I had begun to work with some architects in the early 80s. And I had the sense, first of all, that architecture itself was undergoing a profound transformation, and that all the interesting architects were talking about the end of modern architecture, that is to say, Le Corbusier, Mies, and so on and so forth. The iconic picture of the end of modernism was an enormous housing complex in the sort of standard modern style. I think in St. Louis, I think it's called Pruitt Ego, and this housing complex was blown up, was destroyed. So the image of the destruction of this building was for the architects a kind of emblem of the end of modernity. And what replaced that was a very different kind of architecture, one that was much less severe, that made less absolute demands, that was friendlier, that was more decorative. And it was clear that this was something of a new style. And postmodernism then became the appropriate word for this new kind of architecture. I then began to ask people, the architects, for example, when they thought this change began. What I began to feel was that this was not just a change in architecture, but it was a change on many different levels of social life. And perhaps it was a change that was more significant. Well, I won't say it was more significant than the 60s, which of course were a fundamental moment of change for many of our societies, but it was the consequence of the 60s. It was what, for us in America, what came out of the end of the Vietnam War, the defeat in Vietnam, this new era that we began to enter at that point. And in my investigations of postmodernism, it was important to me not just to describe this in architecture or in literature, but to make connections with what one might call other levels of social life. That could be daily life itself, but it would certainly have to include politics, economics, and so on and so forth. And I think that after a while one realizes, and I think today everyone realizes, that around this period, maybe 1980 or so, fundamental changes were taking place in society, which left us in a very different place from the older period. The most obvious change, of course, was the introduction of the personal computer. It seems to me that that's a fundamental transformation. That marked a fundamental transformation in people's lives and gradually in the whole object world around us. And we forget that. I mean, even the VCR itself came into being in the early 80s, and so on and so forth. One can begin to collect these signs of change. Now, I don't think one has to think in terms of causality. Society is I don't want to say a seamless web, but nonetheless, all of these various phenomena are interrelated. They echo each other. They are maybe symptoms of some fundamental central reality, and therefore, the more one observes of them, the more complete a sense one has of the nature of this change.